Hey, Kelly here. Have you ever wanted to learn a foreign language but not known where to start? If so, then listen on because I'm going to be giving you 9 tips for starting to learn a foreign language from scratch. And as a bonus at the end of the video, I'm going to be giving you my recommendations for beginner materials for Spanish, French and Afrikaans. Tip number 1. Choose your language carefully. Your reason for learning a particular language is so important. Methods and resources can be changed easily, but feelings are more difficult to change. You want to choose a language that you love. Don't get caught up thinking, oh well, I started French at school, therefore it makes sense to pick French. Trust me, this is not a good enough reason, and why I failed miserably at French. I have absolutely no interest in it. I have no interest in the language or desire to visit France. Sorry to any French viewers. On the other hand, since I was a child, I've had a love for Spanish music, the Spanish way of life, and I have many fond memories of childhood holidays to Spain, which has meant that in just a year of studying Spanish, I can already say a lot more than I can after about 10 years of studying French. So choose a language you love and not something just because you've already started it. Also, don't be tempted to learn a language just because it's popular or because other people tell you it's a useful language to learn. In my experience, trying to learn a useful language if you have no interest in the language will not allow you to get good enough for the language to be useful to you. Tip number 2. Work out what type of learner you are. There are 4 different types of learners. Visual learners, who as the name suggests, learn best through sight. Auditory learners, who learn best through listening. And kinesthetic and tactile learners, who are often clumped together because they are quite similar, but who learn best through movement or doing things. The difference between kinesthetic and tactile learners is that tactile learners also like to write things down. The easiest way to work out what type of learner you are is to imagine you were trying to put together a complex piece of furniture. Which of the following would you find easiest to follow? Written instructions, audio instructions, or a video that you could follow along with? If you immediately thought written instructions, chances are you are a visual learner. Audio and auditory learner, or the video that you can follow along to, that you are a kinesthetic or tactile learner. It is possible to learn in one of the other ways, but to make learning as fast and painless as possible, I highly recommend sticking to your best style of learning. This doesn't mean you never use the other styles of learning, but you do need to do that. But working in your best style first will get you results much faster and easier. For example, I'm an auditory learner. For years I tried to learn through textbooks, which are more for visual learners. Since switching to audio-based courses, my learning has been faster and easier. But I find I still need to see the words for them to really sink in. So don't disregard the other methods completely, but concentrate on your strongest method first. Tip number 3. Choose the learning materials that are right for your style of learning. For language learning, this typically means that visual learners will learn best through textbooks, flashcards, pictures, and written dialogues. Auditory learners through audio courses, podcasts, and listening to conversations. Kinesthetic and tactile learners through using the language to communicate, and also through the immersion approach where they are surrounded by the language, even if they are a little bit out of their depth. Learning through role plays and using language partners works well for this type of learner. And also look for meetup groups for learners of the language you're studying if you are a tactile or kinesthetic learner. Tip number 4. Don't collect learning materials. It's tempting to get every learning resource out there to help you achieve your goals, but having too many resources can actually lead to confusion of which one to start with, and then have you jumping back from one resource to another and not completing any of them. Instead, find no more than 2 really good resources that you will enjoy using and will be easy and convenient for you to use. For example, don't choose an audio course on CD if you don't have easy access to a machine that plays CDs, because then you've just put a barrier in your way of being able to use the materials you've chosen. And whilst you search for a device to play the CDs on, time ticks away, and you think of all the other things you need to do, and then you feel guilty and you do them instead of listening to your CDs. Barriers put us off from studying and sometimes never even get started. So consider if you will be able to use this material easily. And even things such as, do you like the voice on the audio course? Is the language too formal for how you will use it? Is the book too big or too heavy for you to carry around? Is the text too small? Do you like the layout of the book? Do you like the feel of the pages? Is the podcast too fast or too slow for you? Are the topics relevant to you and for what you want to use the language for? Take your time over choosing materials and resources because they go a long way to your success and ultimately how you feel about the language. Choosing the wrong materials can lead to feelings of frustration and negativity towards the language. Tip number 5, decide when and for how long you will study each day. It's much better to do a little every day rather than a lot just once a week. I recommend starting with just 30 minutes a day of active study and seeing how you go from there. Try to stick to studying at the same time each day if you can, so that it becomes a natural part of your day that just happens and not something that you simply try to fit in. If you are serious about this, you will find the time to do it. Tip number 6. Along with your 30 minutes or so of active study, try to put things into your day that leave you exposed to the language in a more relaxed and easy way. This can be listening to a podcast in the language you're learning as you travel to work, looking through some flashcards whilst you're on the bus, searching for dinner recipes in your target language instead of your native language, or changing up music you listen to in your target language when you go for a run and so on. These are just a few ideas to get you started, but the possibilities are endless. Tip number 7. Make sure you use the language. A lot of well-known polyglots highlight the importance of input. Steve Kaufman uses input only for the first few months of learning a new language. I think input is incredibly important and has contributed to my success in language learning. But I do also feel that you need to use the language at the same time. Otherwise, you can run the risk of understanding a language but not being able to speak it. I know this because this is exactly what happened to me with French. So go out of your way to use the language. If speaking is your end goal, then you need to start speaking. If it's writing, then you need to start writing. Even if what you can communicate at first is only very little. This will help you gain confidence and momentum, which I believe are crucial for keeping you going with learning, especially when it gets tough. For speaking, if you live in the country of the language you're learning, go out and speak to people in shops and cafes. Even if it's just saying please and thank you, hello, goodbye at first. If you don't live in the country, then that's fine. The internet has allowed us to do amazing things. So find a language partner or tutor on a site like italki.com to practice speaking with. Tip number 8. Listen to native materials. This is something a lot of language classes and courses don't do enough of. They expose learners mostly to materials aimed at learners, which sounds logical. But to get a feel for the rhythms and flow of a language, which will help you with pronunciation, intonation, and being understood by native speakers, which is the goal for most people, this really can only be done by listening to native level materials. Again, the internet is wonderful and has allowed me to find an app for watching TV shows in Afrikaans called CakeNet on Showmax, and a YouTube channel which talks in Spanish about politics and happenings around the world in an entertaining and energetic way called Visual Politic. They also have an English version of the channel. Tip number 9. Remember your why. Learning a language is a long road that often takes us out of our comfort zone and challenges our confidence. It's important when you go through times when you're struggling to grasp something or you feel like you're not making any progress to remember why you started in the first place. Remembering your why will carry you through. I've been working with people in education for 20 years and I often hear people say they regret not persevering with something they really wanted to learn when it got tough. Don't let yourself be one of them. Bonuses. And here are the bonus materials I promised you. These materials I have used myself and found to be very good. I would say though that as we are all so different, I do recommend that you check out these resources first before buying. I am an auditory learner, and so these products appeal to me mostly because of that fact. And I am not affiliated in any way to these products. I will put the links to them down in the description. I have concentrated on materials I think are best for mostly beginners. For Spanish, I would highly recommend Spanish with Paul. He has a lot of free videos on YouTube and also a paid audio and video course. I like it that he is British, and so he can understand and explain why certain parts of the Spanish language would trip me up in particular. Butterfly Spanish is a YouTube channel with good coverage of Spanish grammar, presented in a friendly and easy to understand way. Doorway to Mexico is a podcast for intermediate to advanced students, although I as a beginner am using it to get used to hearing Spanish and push myself out of my comfort zone. I like that it shows how real people actually speak rather than formal textbook speech. You also learn a lot about the customs and culture of Mexico and other Latin American countries. Easy Spanish is a YouTube channel where Spanish speakers are interviewed on the street, mostly in Mexico City and other parts of Mexico. This is a fantastic way to hear natural conversations, slang and idiomatic expressions, and to also learn a lot about the culture and the people. There are also English subtitles, making it really good for beginners. For Afrikaans, I would recommend the Teach Yourself Afrikaans from the Teach Yourself series with book and audio. The audio comes on CD or MP3. It is a good book for visual learners and those who like a more traditional style of learning, as it is set out a little bit like a school textbook. Colloquial Afrikaans from the Colloquial series with book and audio, again available on CD or MP3. Although it is a textbook, it focuses on learning through conversational dialogues, and for that reason I think it's a good choice for all learning styles. Kinder Stories, a YouTube channel with children's stories in Afrikaans, and the EduFriends series on the channel is especially good for complete beginners to build vocab. The O Gunsteling Boeken and Oom Attie se Slaaptyd stories are good for intermediate learners or good beginners who want a challenge. For French, I would recommend not starting at all. No, I'm kidding. I would recommend Pimsleur. It's great for auditory learners. The Teach Yourself French from the Teach Yourself series I think is also good. It is a textbook with audio on CD or MP3 and is good for people who like a more traditional style of learning. Assamil French is good for visual and auditory learners, as it is a book with CD. Some of the dialogues are quite humorous actually, and this is a series which is popular with the polyglot Luca Lampariello. Although for myself it feels a little bit like a school textbook with the exercises at the end, but that is because of my own personal preference and not a fault with the series itself. That's all for this video. Tell me down in the comments what you struggle with most when you learn a language. I coach people on how to learn languages, and I work specifically with independent language learners who like to learn the language themselves, but who need a little help and guidance with things like starting out, working out what type of learner they are, gaining confidence to speak to people, that's always scary, and staying motivated and accountable. If you'd like to know a little more or contact me, head on over to my website www.fruitfulfunfluent.com, such a mouthful, or email me at kelly@fruitfulfunfluent.com. That's everything for now, and I'll catch you on the next one. Bye for now.